Charles Oliveira vs Arman and Tsarukyan has to happen.
Charles Oliveira, one of the most accomplished mixed martial arts athletes of all time.
When Charles Oliveira fights, he fights like a berserker. He puts himself in danger.
Arman Tsarukyan still very much a problem at lightweight.
I'm obsessed with the UFC gold. It's my dream. I want to be a champion more than everybody.
Oliveira is coming off an impressive decision victory over Max Holloway, a fight in which he dominated. And after that performance, a lot of fans are clinging to the rematch between Arman and Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira. But before we get the video started, my name is JuicyMMA. I make opinionated fight breakdowns. If you're ready, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. I think at this point, it's pretty clear, if you're a very high-level grappler, you have a natural advantage over most other fighters at your particular weight class, or honestly, in the entire UFC as a whole. And when you talk about both Arman and Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira, these are some of the best grapplers in the entire sport, not just for the lightweight division. And because of that, I think it's very obvious to see why both of these guys have been incredibly successful throughout their UFC careers. Now, of course, it's not only grappling for both of these guys. Charles Oliveira is a very high-level striker, in particular his offensive striking ability, and even for Arman and Tsarukyan, although he's not the best striker in the world, he does have an ability to hurt you on the feet, which definitely does a great job at setting things up in terms of their wrestling and in terms of their grappling as a whole. But at the end of the day, the big reason for why both Charles Oliveira as well as Arman and Tsarukyan are as successful and as good as they currently are comes down to the overall grappling of both guys. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, why specifically do I think Charles Oliveira vs Arman and Tsarukyan has to happen? Well, in my opinion, this comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor I want to touch upon was the first fight itself. Because if you go back and watch that first fight between Arman and Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira, it was an incredibly close fight. Both guys showed off their great grappling skills as well as some striking ability in certain rounds as well. And when you look back at the individual round by round scoring, it was super close as well. Round 1 I thought was pretty clear for Oliveira, round 2 I thought was pretty clear for Tsarukyan, and round 3 was going to be your swing round. And even round 3 was an incredibly close round. It really comes down to, what do you favor more? Is it position or submissions? If you favor submissions more, you're probably going to give the fight to Charles. If you favor control time more, you're probably going to give that third round to Arman and Tsarukyan. And even with that being said, there is some nuance. Arman landed some good shots in that third round. Charles landed some decent shots in that third round as well. It was an incredibly close round, and honestly, the MMA community is more or less split on who they thought won round 3 of the first fight. Now, of course, in terms of the official judges' scorecards, they gave the fight to Arman and Tsarukyan, but based upon how close the fight was, I definitely do think we need to see a rematch between both these guys, in particular over the course of a full 5 rounds. But the next factor for why I think Arman and Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira has to happen comes down to the matchmaking itself. Because when you take a look at both these guys, I actually think they're in very similar situations. Now, I know this may sound crazy, because on one hand, the UFC loves Charles Oliveira. He's a huge star for them, he makes a lot of money for them, and obviously he fights pretty frequently. And on the other hand, the UFC absolutely hates Arman and Tsarukyan. He pulled out of the Islam fight last second, he headbutted Dan Hooker, he got into a fight again in RAF wrestling, and even after UFC 326, Dana White himself was talking about Arman and Tsarukyan and said he's not all that happy with Arman still at this point. So a lot of you in the comments may be thinking, what am I talking about? How are they in similar situations? But the reality is, both of these guys are one fight away from a title shot. In the case of Charles Oliveira, although he did come off a very dominating performance over Max Holloway, Ilia Topuria still is the champion, and Charles Oliveira got knocked out by Ilia Topuria not that long ago. So because of that, he's not getting a title shot in his next fight. And for Arman and Tsarukyan, although I think it's unfair, I think he should get the next title shot against Ilia. At the end of the day, the UFC just hates Arman at this point, based upon some of the antics that he's done to himself, I guess. But nonetheless, both of these guys are one fight away from a title shot, it would seem. So why not book both these guys up against each other at this point? Both guys are coming off very impressive victories in Max Holloway Holloway in the case of Charles Oliveira, and in Dan Hooker in the case of Arman Tsarukyan. And outside of just that, when you look at the top half of the lightweight division, there's not many other fights that even make sense whatsoever for either one of these guys. Like for example, Justin Gaethje is already fighting Ilia Topuria, so he's out of the running. Paddy Pimblett essentially eliminated himself from fighting either one of these guys after his poor performance against Gaethje. Max Holloway just lost against Charles, so he's out of the running as well. The only guy that could somewhat make sense for either one of these fighters would be BST. You can do BST versus Charles Oliveira or even BST versus Arman Tsarukyan. I think both of those fights do make sense, but at the end of the day, that fight doesn't have the same level of steam as a potential rematch would between Charles and Arman. So regardless of how they get it done, whether it's for a #1 contender fight, whether it's for the BMF title fight, whether it's for the vacant belt if Ilia decides to move up to 170, it doesn't really matter. I just think this rematch makes too much sense at this point and it has to happen next. But another question that some of you may be wondering at this point is who would I favor in a potential rematch between Tsarukyan and Oliveira? Well, in my opinion, I think this fight is more or less a 50-50 sort of fight. I think the issues that each guy gave to his opponent in that first fight is more or less going to be similar in the rematch. In the case of Charles Oliveira, I still think he's going to give Arman trouble by utilizing his submission game, both on top as well as off of his back. And I think the fact that he's always threatening submissions is also going to be a big issue for Arman, even in the rematch. And in terms of Arman Tsarukyan, I still think he's going to give Charles trouble when he's able to get on top. On top, Arman has an amazing ability to land big ground and pound shots in terms of elbows as well as punches, and I don't think in the rematch it'll get any easier for Charles. But one thing that I do want to say is if either one of these guys have made a significant improvement from the first fight to the second fight, I think it has to be Charles. As in terms of his overall wrestling, I think it's pretty clear that Charles is consistently getting better each and every fight. And at this point, I think he's a significantly better wrestler than he was just a couple of years back. And even on top of that, his physical strength has improved pretty significantly as well. As at this point, I feel like he's a lot stronger in the clinch and a lot stronger in the grappling in general compared to where he was at just a couple of years ago. And even in terms of the stand-up, Charles seems to be a little bit better defensively. Obviously, he's still going to be hittable. Guys are going to be able to land big shots against Charles, but nonetheless, I do think Charles has been making some improvements in that aspect of his game as well. So I do think Charles has made a lot of improvements from the first fight to potentially the second fight. And based upon that, I do think I would slightly lean with Charles in the rematch. I do think his increased strength and his increased ability to wrestle is going to help him out a lot in certain situations where he got taken down in the first fight against Arman. And if Charles is able to keep the fight on the feet, I just think he has the advantage. Yes, he is hittable, anything could happen, Arman does hit hard, but at the end of the day, skill for skill, Charles is a significantly better striker compared to Arman. And if Charles can really get going with the volume, I think he gives a lot of trouble to Arman by utilizing the teep kick, the jab, right straight, uppercut, knee to the body, elbows in close, clinch work. There's a lot of different things that Charles can do on the feet to really disrupt the rhythm of Arman Tsarukyan. And even on the ground, as I said before, I do think Charles could have success. He had success in the grappling in the first fight, and I definitely think he could have success in the grappling in the second fight as well. So overall, I think it's super close, very close to a 50-50 performance, but if I had to say at this point, I would slightly lean with Charles Oliveira. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening here, and if we're ever even going to see this rematch. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, be sure to hit that join button for members only live streams, videos, best bets, discounted merch, alongside with additional perks as well. I wanted to thank all my current channel members. You guys do an amazing job at keeping the videos coming and keeping the channel going, and once again, I wanted to say thank you. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who do you think would win a potential rematch between Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.